So as I was saying before I so rudely interrupted myself by reaching for and dropping this book and the phone, the camera, John Locke, I think, has the solution to the problem of whether Stoicism is a good fit for our times. Don't be a pure Stoic, if that means being someone who says we must accept the status quo, we must follow nature, and nature is thoroughly determined beyond our powers of influence. He says, no, be a Stoic pragmatist. And the way he summarizes that attitude is to say, Stoic pragmatists are committed to making life better until their powers are overwhelmed. When circumstances render aggressive affirmation no longer possible, however, they do surrender to the inevitable gracefully and without complaint. As pragmatists, they insist on the centrality of intelligence in the conduct of life, but they extend the reach of good sense to the acknowledgement of failure or futility. Intelligence must guide not only our efforts, but also our surrenders in daily endeavors and in decisions about the end of life. The great question we face again and again is how long to pursue our goals with all our energy and when to pack it in. This is a matter of practical wisdom, and therefore it is easy to get it wrong. We may give up just at the stage when perseverance begins to reap results, or we may keep trying in the teeth of overwhelming odds. Cancer patients requiring painful treatment must make such decisions under adverse conditions. But even under the best circumstances, we must often choose without adequate information. Consequently, we tend to follow our cognitive habits. Pragmatists are unlikely ever to give up, while Stoics may acquiesce too soon. If each belief tendency modifies the other, we may enjoy more graceful and satisfactory lives. Right? Somewhere in the middle between extreme tenacious pragmatism and resigned Stoicism lies a golden mean. John Locke, my esteemed mentor from Vanderbilt. Stoic pragmatism. Read his book. Read his books. He's got lots of good ones. Another of my discussion prompts was, if you don't feel at home anywhere, as some people apparently do not, do you then lack an environment, or at least lack sensitivity and concern for the environment? But a further question, a related question, shouldn't we feel at home everywhere, given our cosmic identity as creatures of the stars? In part one, I was talking about Kwame Anthony Appiah, the cosmopolitan, author of Cosmopolitanism, who affirms a cosmic identity. We're citizens of the world, but the world is part of the cosmos. There's a continuity there. Why shouldn't we feel that and feel at home wherever we are? Once we get to know the other humans in our orbit, why shouldn't we claim our cosmic identity and feel at home in the universe? William James said that's happiness, and Carl Sagan agreed. Varieties of religious experience was James's Gifford Lectures, and varieties of scientific experience Sagan's, and the two complement one another very nicely. So it's a rhetorical question, but I think the answer is that we ought to. It's easier to say than to do, though. One of the people who helps articulate how to claim that identity and bring it down to earth is Margaret Rinkle. I've been talking about her in class. I want people to be aware of her. Nashville resident who writes a wise weekly column for the New York Times. And in her latest column that appeared on Monday, in the last paragraph, she says this. She reminds us of the small comforts that put it all in perspective, cosmic or otherwise. She says, we may be in the middle of a story. We don't know how it will end or even whether it will end, but we're not helpless characters created and directed by an unseen novelist. We shouldn't think of ourselves as puppets in that sense, creatures of some other authorship. I mean, I know plenty of people do on religious grounds. But she's saying that we need to accept that we are co-authors of our own stories, right? Co-authors. We have the power, even in this age of anxiety, to enfold ourselves in small comforts In the joy of tiny pleasures, we can walk out in the dark and look up at the sky. We can remind ourselves that the universe is so much bigger than this fretful, feverish world. And it is still expanding, and it is filled with stars. Isn't that what they said at the end of 2001? A Space Odyssey. Her essays are consistently good, as is her first book, Late Migrations, A Natural History of Love and Loss. I don't know if she'd say so herself, but I say she's a worthy philosopher, someone you should read. Look for her every Monday in the Times. One more question, and then we'll wrap up this conclusion, which has turned out to be harder to do because I got another interruption, not quite so entertaining a moment ago, and had to start all over again. Persevere. Nevertheless, I persisted. One more question. This is one that's posed by Robin Atfield, or suggested by him in Environmental Ethics, a very short introduction. What do you think about needlessly cutting down a healthy tree? Well, here's what I thought about it earlier this summer, and I'm reading from one of my tweets. My neighbors, can I do this without dropping it and creating chaos? My neighbors committed arboricide. They took down 2 perfectly healthy trees in their front yard. And I sort of feel like in my extended front yard, and so I got mad about it. And why? Just for a gratuitous circle drive. Where is the Lorax to speak for the trees when you really need it? And I think that will wrap it up for now. I will talk to you guys on Zoom shortly.